Hello friends, before we dive right into today's story, tell me, do you enjoy listening with a cup of coffee, or is tea your thing? Here I'm helping you discover new vocabulary, practice your listening, and enjoy the beauty of storytelling. Share your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I love reading your comments. They say a neighborhood is like a small village, where every face becomes familiar after some time. You greet the shopkeeper downstairs, exchange polite smiles with the old lady who waters her plants on the balcony, and maybe even share a few friendly conversations in the elevator with strangers who eventually become acquaintances. But in my building, there was one door that resisted all familiarity. Apartment number 6B. Behind that door lived a man who had built a fortress out of silence. He passed through the hallways like a shadow, always present yet never reachable. While others greeted each other with cheerful nods or casual gossip, he remained untouched, like a painting hung on a wall. Visible but never alive. I remember the first time I saw him. A tall figure with tired shoulders, a pale face that seemed carved from sorrow, and eyes that carried storms too heavy to release. He looked at no one, spoke to no one, and yet his silence was louder than any conversation happening around him. Children in the building whispered that he was a ghost. The caretaker called him the writer who forgot his own words. And a neighbor once told me that he was cursed, destined to live without speech. To me, he was not frightening but intriguing. How could a person live in a world so full of noise, without ever contributing a single word? His silence wasn't emptiness. It was weight, like air before a thunderstorm. Sometimes I wondered if he even heard the laughter, the quarrels, and the small celebrations that echoed through the corridors. Or had he built an invisible wall between himself and all of humanity? Day after day, I observed him from a distance. The way he carried grocery bags with quiet precision. The way his door closed without a single creak. The way his shadow disappeared quickly into his apartment as though he feared being seen. And somewhere in that mystery, my curiosity grew into something else. Not just intrigue, but compassion. There was something profoundly human about the way he existed. Like a man who had been robbed of everything yet still chose to walk among us, unnoticed, unspoken, unseen. It was a stormy evening when the truth began to unfold. The city was drowning in rain, and the building's power suddenly failed. Darkness swallowed the hallways, and silence hung heavier than usual. I lit a candle and started walking upstairs when I noticed his door slightly ajar. My heart raced. Not from fear but from the strange pull of curiosity that had haunted me for months. With hesitant steps, I knocked softly. The door creaked open, and for the first time, I stepped into the world of my silent neighbor. His apartment was unlike any other. The walls were covered with old photographs, the kind that had turned yellow with time. Stacks of letters were piled on the table, bound with ribbons that had lost their color. The air smelled of dust, ink, and forgotten memories. He sat in the corner, holding a picture frame close to his chest. The flickering candlelight revealed his face, and for the first time, I saw not just silence but unbearable grief written in his eyes. He looked at me, and without a word, handed me a leather-bound diary. My hands trembled as I opened it. The pages told a story that explained everything. Years ago, he had been a husband, a father, a man filled with dreams and laughter. His wife was his best friend, a woman whose smile made ordinary days extraordinary. His daughter was the light of his world, a child with a heart too pure for the cruelties of life. But one night, tragedy struck like lightning, an accident that stole both of them away, leaving him alone in a world that suddenly felt like a punishment. He had survived the crash, but what remained was not life, only existence. Words, once his companions, betrayed him. Every sentence reminded him of the voices he would never hear again. Every greeting felt meaningless without them to return it. So he chose silence, not out of choice, but out of unbearable necessity. His silence was not empty. It was the echo of laughter lost, the weight of goodbyes unspoken, the scream of a soul that had forgotten how to heal. As I closed the diary, my eyes filled with tears. I realized then that silence is not always absence. Sometimes it is the loudest cry of pain. I wanted to say something, to comfort him, but no words felt worthy enough. So I simply placed my hand on his shoulder, and for a brief moment, we shared a conversation without words, one of empathy, of understanding, of shared humanity. Days passed, and I often thought about that night. I wanted to check on him, to perhaps bring him food, or simply sit with him so he would know he was not alone. But when I knocked on his door a week later, nobody answered. The landlord later informed me that he had quietly left during the night. No note, no farewell, nothing but silence left behind. Apartment 6B stood empty once again, but it no longer felt mysterious. It felt sacred, like a place that had witnessed love too deep and loss too unbearable. Sometimes late at night, when I pass that door, I still feel his presence, like an echo of his silence woven into the walls. My silent neighbor taught me something I had never understood before. We often think silence means emptiness, but in truth, silence can be filled with the heaviest stories. His silence was not the absence of sound. It was the presence of memories too powerful to express. It was a reminder that every person we meet carries battles we may never see, scars we may never understand, and griefs that words cannot describe. The moral of his story lives with me every day. Never assume someone's silence is coldness or arrogance. Sometimes silence is love that has nowhere left to go. Sometimes it is pain that refuses to be spoken. And sometimes, silence itself becomes the loudest language of all. Behind every silent face lies a story untold. And often the quietest people carry the heaviest hearts.